for decades, America propped up a who's who of military and theocratic dictators. They gave you what you wanted: oil, airfields, oil, security arrangements, oil. And let's not forget a few torture black sites.
Hey, hey.
He's called the Egyptian Jon Stewart. Bassem Youssef's highly acclaimed comedy show took aim at the governments of Mubarak, Morsi and Sisi, and that led to a political backlash which forced him into exile. Now living in Los Angeles, Youssef is touring the United States with a stand-up act in English. He's using jokes to make fun of Middle Eastern politics while putting Donald Trump's White House in his crosshairs. And Bassem Youssef joins us now. Bassem, good to have you on the Newsmakers. Real pleasure having you on the show. I want to ask you a question that I've had.
Thank you so much for having me.
I've had this question in mind for a long, long time. Does it annoy you when they call you the Egyptian Jon Stewart?
No, it doesn't, because it gives reference for people here, especially in the United States, you know, to tell them like who the guy is based. So basically, in 3 words, they tell you exactly who I am, in reference to the people living here.
Is it harder to do comedy and satire in the US, in the English language, to a US audience?
Yeah, it is not about being in the US. It's as you said, it's doing it in a foreign language. If you It's one thing to talk or speak in a foreign language, but to do comedy in a foreign language, you need to rewire your brain, and it's about references, it's about timing, it's about pacing, speed, delivery. It's a whole new way to learn the language. So it has been hard, but it's been interesting, and I feel that it is as a kind of like reinventing my career for the 3rd or 4th time.
Yeah, and sort of tapping into the culture and rewiring your brain. Maybe giving the example of Trevor Noah, I saw a lot of his stuff in South Africa as a South African. Now, within South Africa, a lot of his humor had that sort of raw quality to it because he was a son of the South African soil, right? So he was irritating the left wing, the right wing, conservatives, liberals, majorities, minorities, and so on. When I look at his comedy in the United States, as successful as he is, it's very much a left-wing critique of Trump or conservatives, right? It's different to what he did in South Africa. Are you relating to that in any way, that your comedy will have to be different in the US?
Well, my comedy is the same. I think most comedians, especially people who work in political satire, they do direct their comedy against conservatives or right-wing. I don't know, but I think like many of people back home kind of got annoyed of my comedy, but still mostly on the right wing. I don't know the history of Trevor Noah annoying the people on the left wing, and why would they be annoyed by his comedy in South Africa? Maybe because he was talking about corruption. Maybe the left wing got to power and he criticized them. But basically back in Egypt, the left wing even didn't get a chance, so they were never in power. So it just happened that the 3 or 4 years that I was working in Egypt, as I was criticizing authority was either a right-wing military or a right-wing religious regime. So they didn't really like me. Most people on the conservative side, they're not very. Most people on the conservative side, they're not very funny.
Right. Are you disappointed, no matter how excited you may be in reinventing yourself and, you know, living a new life in the US? Are you disappointed that you're not back home doing what you were doing?
Well, nobody ever is happy about being uprooted from his own home, because what he tried to do is to use comedy in order to comment on the political scene. It's always sad, but I kind of reached some sort of a resolution with myself that I need to look forward and not look back. I will not let that break me. I will try to reinvent myself again and try to find some sort of success in this new country again. But of course, nobody ever liked to have to be targeted or being pushed away from his own country because he did his job as a comedian.
If you were there right now, would Bernameg have a lot of material to work with?
Oh, yeah. There's absolutely no lack of material for Bernameg back in Egypt. It has been a farce, basically. It's been very stupid and very crazy and hilarious. I can't say really it's hilarious because you have to say that it's kind of like, it's not hilarious when people that you know get put in jail or get killed or get detained or get taken away from their homes. So I don't know how funny it could be because, yeah, the material is hilarious. The official statement is very comedic, but the impact on everyday life is not very funny.
Yeah. Just tap into culture a little bit. Within Arab culture, people love to mock their leaders. They love to make fun of their leaders. They love to make fun about, I don't know, how things don't work, how corrupt people are. Egypt, for example, I remember in the early 2000s and the mid 2000s when I was there under Mubarak's regime, nearly every single person I met had a joke about Mubarak, right? And part of what made the joke so funny was that it was so subversive to make that joke in private with your friends in the coffee shops and so on. But no one would dare say that out loud in public. In public, you would show a sense of respect to the leader, no matter how crazy you thought he was, no matter how corrupt and useless he thought he was. Has that changed, or are people still being tremendously funny and brilliant and witty and satirical about their leaders, but only in private?
No, but that doesn't have to do anything with culture. This is human nature. You mock your leaders. The only difference is the state of freedom of expression. As you said, people did that against Mubarak in private because they were afraid to go to jail. Right? It never stopped. People mocking their leaders, their authority, never stopped any single day. The only difference that after the revolution 2011, there was a window for 3 years, 3 or 4 years, where people can say what they had the illusion or the ability to mock them openly in the media. So what changed is not people's ability or tendency to mock their leaders. Is what changed is the status of freedom of expression. If you do it in private, and then when and in public, it's not out of respect; it's out of fear.
But has that changed? I mean, really, if we look at all the disappointment post-Arab Spring, we look at Tunisia as maybe the only semi-success story. Has it really changed?
What has changed? You mean the fact that people mock their leaders? Because that never changed. But what do you mean? What has changed?
Have people been open enough? Has there been enough freedom out there now? Has the political space opened enough for people to do it publicly?
No, absolutely. Of course not. If you're following what's happening in the Middle East, especially Egypt, of course not. The political space has become very constricted and very fearful.
Very finally, Bassem, what do you hope Americans could learn about the Arab world and the Middle East?
I hope that regular and average American know that whatever state of oppression in the Middle East is partly caused by the fact that many Western countries, including Europe, United States, France, Germany, that many of these dictators are empowered by Western democratic countries who supply weapons and supply logistic helps and basically turn the other way when those dictators are oppressing their people. You cannot continue supplying weapons and giving legitimacy to dictators just because they buy your weapons, and then when everything goes down to destruction and terrorism and cracking down on freedom of expression, when that happens, you can't say, oh my God, look at the Middle East, where did this come from? Everybody is complicit in this, and everybody has a role in this. So you cannot just like be sitting there in your democratic Western country and say like, we feel so sorry for what's happening in the Arab world. It has, most of those weapons in the Middle East has not been manufactured by Middle Eastern countries. They have been bought by Western democratic countries. And we really need to start talking about how the weapon industry in the West has been empowering many of these dictators in the Middle East.
Bassem Youssef, been a pleasure having you on the Newsmakers. Thank you very much for joining us.